Okay, hey everyone. So hopefully you watched the video where we looked through all of our supplies and started to get them set up. Since then, I took the cardboard that was in the box, the packaging, and I taped down 2 sheets of our canvas pad. Make sure when you peel them out that you're gluing down or taping down the side that is primed, so the back feels fuzzier and the front feels like it has like a plasticky kind of chalky coating on it. It'll be a little messy when it comes out because it's actually canvas, which is no big deal. And I taped down one, and I was going to tape down another. And these are just going to be little tests to get us started, getting used to the material, getting used to our brushes, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to set up our palette. Okay, so then after you get the 2 sheets taped down, I want you to rub not so much the outside of the tape, but just the tape that is on the canvas edge and in the corners, and that will help it from bleeding under the tape. Not sure I put tape in your kit, but any kind of masking tape will do, painter's tape. Scotch tape will even do the trick. Okay, so then when they're taped down, I have one that we're gonna do in black and white, or I could call it achromatic. And I want you to just divide the sheet into 3 pieces. We're going to do a little value scale in the middle and then some brush stroke exercises on the right and the left. Mine, it doesn't have to be exactly like mine, and it doesn't have to be exact, but I did 2.5 inches on the outsides and 4.5 and 2.5 on the outside. Actually, I did 2. I'm going to make it 2.5. Bring this line in. But again, you can just freehand this, like it doesn't matter so much. You're going to need a few drawing supplies, which I'm assuming most of you have from your past drawing or 2D design classes, but nothing major, just like a little bit of charcoal and some graphite. And then this other one, we're going to do a little bit of understanding of our colors that are in our kit. And I divided it in half, and then I divided it into 6 even blocks. So if you can break that down into 12 total. Again, they don't have to look just like mine. You can totally freehand it. These are just test surfaces to start to help us kind of understand how the materials work. Okay, so then in my palette box, I took a sheet of my palette paper out. Just tear it out, and then laid it inside my box like so. And I am gonna take my titanium white, and I'm gonna put approximately the size of like, a chocolate chip maybe, up in one corner near the edge. So about that big, like a hefty chocolate chip. And then I'm going to do the same with the black on the bottom. So about that much. Part of this exercise and part of painting is to figure out how much paint you need and how far it will go and how you can stretch it or move it around with some of these mediums. So for this exercise, I am going to use, to start, my 2 flat brushes that are synthetic. They're calling these wash brushes, a 1 inch and a 3/4 inch. I can do a whole separate video on brushes and brush quality and how to clean them. But for now, we'll just start with these, and then we can kind of investigate a couple of the other ones down the road. Okay, so, and I want you to grab a palette knife. My recommendation is that you grab either one of these. I'm going to take this one here. And like you've learned in your drawing or your 2D classes, all things have to revolve around value. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and mix on our palette a 50 gray. So I'm going to take the same proportions of white plus black. And this is going to be one of your biggest lessons, is whenever you scoop paint with a brush or a palette knife, you want to have a towel. And if these rags are frustrating to you because they get dirty so quickly, you can do this with paper towel if you'd like to make them disposable, but then we'll use these to also paint with. But I'm going to wipe that off, and then I'm going to try to grab about the same amount of black. And then this is where we're going to talk about mixing. So what we want to do is we like push it into one little pile and then pull it back and squish it kind of back and forth from pile to pile. Sometimes when I see people try to mix paint for the first time, I see them like try to stir it, but the idea is that you're like squishing the pigments back and forth. So that they are incorporating into each other. Hopefully you can see that. I have found with these videos, if you can zoom in on parts of them, that might be helpful, or to watch them on a computer and not just on your little phone screen. You can kind of see what's going on maybe better. And what we'll learn all semester is that the funnest thing is setting up a really great palette, and then it makes the painting really easy. So I'm going to try and take as much of the knife as I can, and then clean, well, I'm not going to clean it off just yet. What I want to do now, I have a 0, a 50, and a 100. I'm going to grab a little bit of this 50 and put it here, and a little bit of this 50, put it here. Again, trying to really get it all off my knife, clean it off. And then I'm going to try to make a 30 and a 70. So I'm going to grab some white. And now I have a value scale. Clean that off. Grab some black. About that much. I'm going to try to make a 70. I'm like scraping it up and squishing it together. And I'll clean off my knife. Okay, so then we want to start to put some of the paint on the surface. I'm going to move this over so you can see it maybe a little better. And I'm going to start with my 1-inch wash. To start, I'm going to take my solvent-free fluid, no, excuse me, I'm sorry, my Terp Natural, and I am just going to get the brush a little wet. So like if you were painting with acrylic, the binder is not linseed oil, it is water, or actually it's polymer emulsion, which is plastic, but it's water that's in it. And for the oil, it's just the linseed oil and the paint. So we need something, which is not water in this case, like acrylic, to help thin it down and move it around. So what we're gonna start with is we're gonna take a little tiny bit of black. Can you see this? Hope so. And I'm going to load both sides of my brush, and I'm going to try to make a value scale on my canvas paper. So you can see how it doesn't quite fill in the tooth of the canvas. So I can do one of two things. I can use more paint, or I can use more of these things to start to try to move them forward. So I'm going to switch to my linseed oil, which is what is making these thinner. I'm going to grab a little more of the paint, and you can see by adding that linseed oil, it thins down the paint, and it makes it so that it's able to fill in the little holes on the canvas paper. So I'm going to start with my black at the bottom, just following my scale. And then I'm gonna wipe out my brush. I'm not gonna clean it right now. I'm just gonna wipe it out a little bit. And I'm gonna grab some of the gray, the 50. Super dry brush. And I'm gonna add a little linseed oil. And then you can really see how it starts to move. And then when I feel like my brush is pretty cleaned out of the paint, I wipe it out just a little bit. I'm gonna grab a little linseed oil. I'm gonna grab my white. You can see that other pigment kind of pulling up in it. I'm using like a cross-hatching mark where I'm crisscrossing back and forth to put the pigment down. I'm gonna grab a little bit of the 30. I'm gonna add a little linseed oil. These can be really messy because we're gonna turn these into an ombre in just a minute. We're gonna try and make them like a really gradual scale. You're gonna love it. This is the moment that you're gonna fall in love with oil paint if you were unsure. I'm just gonna wipe the brush out. The reason I'm not cleaning my brush big time right now is because these are all in the same family. If I was using color, I might wash the brush out, which I'll show you in a bit. But for now, we can just wipe it out in our towel. That's why our towels are so important. You'll see when I don't put the linseed oil or the other mediums in there, it's like painting with lipstick or something. Like it doesn't really flow. Okay, so we have this pretty nice value scale with relatively little work done. And I'm gonna switch to a clean brush. And I'm gonna, with it dry, see how it pulls the paint. If I can start to cross hatch this white to gray together. All those times in your drawing classes where you were working with charcoal, little did you know that it was leading you to understand how to make a nice value scale or an ombre in paint. So I'm having to really think about like how much pressure I push down with my brush and so forth. I'm gonna wipe that off. Still dry, I didn't charge it with any of the mediums. And I'm gonna come in and cut these together. This is something that people so badly want to be able to do with acrylic, and it is so hard because it dries so fast. I'm seeing I have a little too much dark, so I'm gonna wipe my brush out. You're gonna love oil. I'm gonna come down to this one because of all of its flexibility. I have a look, it's pretty thin with linseed oil here. You can see, I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but it wasn't quite covered. We'll wash it out again, and then now you have a little pretty ombre. So just from this simple exercise alone, we can make some really beautiful backdrops, backgrounds, negative spaces for our paintings to build our positive shapes, our subjects, our imagery on top of in a really cool way. So what I want you to do in these extra spaces is this is a chance for us to figure out how these other mediums move and how far our paint went. My hope is with the paint that I have here that I put all of it onto the surface, and when I'm done, I don't really have anything to waste. I'll tell you how to kind of save it as it unfolds, but the goal is to always put out what you need and then add little bits as you go so that you don't waste the paint. Okay, so I'm gonna switch to a different brush just to see what happens. I'm going to use, this is a flat number 6, and it's this hog hair one. They're pretty cheapo. So I'm going to pull it apart and make sure that all the bristles that are going to fall out not in my painting. Like I said, I'll do a video on brushes later, so you can learn about it. So I'm going to take the white with the dry brush and the bristle and see what that feels like. And it's so different. It shows the brush strokes a little more. You can see here, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but the white titanium that we are using, it says it's opaque, but some of my pencil is still showing through a little bit, so it's a little bit transparent. If I had used the transparent white, we'd really see through it, which I can show you in a minute. Okay, and then I'm gonna maybe switch to a different brush. Let's try one of our little bit nicer brushes. I'm going to use this Bright, which is a number 8 with the longer handle. Oh, all your brushes are going to be rock solid when you get them, and that is for shipping purposes so they don't get damaged. So you just pop the glue out of it. And again, kind of flick the bristles around off the surface so you can get the, I don't want it to land on my palette, but you can see the stuff coming out of it. That's the glue and the extra bristles. Okay. So this time, that was with no medium. This time I'm going to try the solvent-free fluid Gamblin solvent-free. I'll load my brush a little bit. I'm going to move into my 30, and we'll see how it moves differently, how that brush works differently. You might be thinking, why do I have long-handled brushes? These are really more for, excuse me, if you're working in an easel and you can be painting like this, like from your shoulder, and not down like this along the way. So it's this solvent-free fluid is a little slippery, a little shiny. You can see too when these are done how they'll dry. I'm gonna try this one, which is a wash brush, 1/2 inch. Again, I'm gonna make sure the bristles come out. This time I'm gonna try just the Terp Natural. This would be our thinner. So you're not adding any oil, or what sometimes they call it is fat, which oil technically is. You're adding the thinner. So let's come in and see what happens here with our 50. I'm going to talk about this fat over lean, thick over thin in a later video when we talk about indirect painting. But right now we're doing something called direct painting. And it doesn't matter so much the order in which we use these materials because they're all happening all at once. And the word for all at once in painting is alla prima. So all of these materials are mixing up at the same time, and we won't have problems with the painting cracking. But when we do indirect painting, we do have to worry about that. So I'll get to that. Okay, now I'm going to try, which one am I going to try? I'll try this round. This is a 6 round. Again, hard as a rock. So I'm going to pop out the glue. I'm going to do it off camera because I don't want the stuff going in my palette. Okay. And this time I'm going to try the solvent-free gel. Okay, what color am I on? 70. You can already see it's a lot glossier. And you thought, oh gosh, there's like hardly anything left on her palette, but there's so much paint there. kind of see how the brush works differently, a little more scumbly. And then I need one more for the black, and I'm going to use my palette knife. So I'll use the flat angled one. So charge the brush or the knife. I'm going to drag the black on. When and if I ever have tape on my canvas, I want to try and pull the brush or the knife away from the tape edge so that it's not seeping up underneath. I'm going to go back to a bigger brush to see how quickly I can make those little canvas holes fill in. I'm going to wash this out. And maybe here I'll use the linseed oil. So I'm just kind of trying the different ones. I think I used them all. So you can see why we have these tiny little jars, because you can see how they would get contaminated pretty quickly. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna wipe this out. This is, again, I think this is my favorite brush. And I'm gonna see if I can blend these together. I might have to add some white here because the gray got pretty heavy at the top. So I'm gonna go back and grab the rest of my white. I'm gonna put a little bit of my linseed oil on my brush so that I can activate the rest of that white. Oh yeah, there's the stuff. It's so much about like the amount that you're using. It's gotten too low with the whites, so I'm gonna wipe it off so that I can move it around without adding more white. Cool, right? Pretty fun. Okay, and then in this last pass, I want you to see how far the rest of your paint will go. So I'm gonna grab all my black, try to. And try just a couple different kinds of brush strokes. There's still a lot of paint on my brush. I'm gonna switch to this one. I'm gonna show you really quickly. Again, we've just been kind of cleaning them in our towel, but if you, if you want, and they're getting too muddy at this point, you can take your silicoil cleaner and you push the brush down into the fluid. In an ideal world, the fluid would come up to like right here, like right above it, but I just wanted us to not have to buy a bigger cleaning fluid. You might have to buy more. You're not going to want to clean this jar until the end of the semester, if even, and I'll explain how that'll work. So use the coil to clean out. And you can smell it. It smells like a citrusy cleaner. And then I'm going to dry the brush off. Okay, so just so you can see how that unfolds. But I'm going to try and get all this black off my palette because I can. Get all the black that's extra on my knife. There's that dry brush quality because I haven't put any medium on my brush. So I'm going to grab just one of them to see. Grab the linseed oil. You can see how thin it is. I grab the rest of my 70. switch brushes just to see how it goes. There's that dry brush. I'm going to use the gel. And you might end up finding which one you love the most. And when we do things that are more specific, you'll have a better feel for what will work where and when. Oh, these are pretty cheap brushes. When I talk about brushes and the washing of them, I'll talk about the ferrule, the handle quality, the glue, and so forth. All my brushes do that. I'll explain. So it's fine. You just pop it back on. I'm going to do the Terp Natural and grab my 30. So I'm always using this like kind of cross-hatching quality. I feel like it's getting too light, too low. So I'm gonna put that brush down, come back to one of my brushes that had the dark in it. Excuse me. And then for the white. I'm out of white on my palette, so I'm going to put a little bit more down. I'm going to show you one last fun thing. Use the bristly one. Because you're thinking, gosh, I'm only using really big brushes right now. I can show you some fun stuff with the little ones. So you can see this bristlier brush leaves these really pretty brush strokes. It's not what I'm going for right now though, so I'm going to switch to this one. Brushes are like tennis shoes. It's like total personal preference in the end. If I had to pick, I would pick these flat synthetics for everything. Okay, so in not too long of a time, hopefully you had fun creating a little ombre. Again, what you've always dreamed of doing with acrylic but struggled to do. I'm cleaning my brush in between if I feel like it's getting away from me. Okay, this has got, I don't remember what I put in here. I think I put the gel, but it's like super shiny and not a lot of pigment. So I might want to add some darks in there or to manipulate that a little more. But what I want to show you with all this extra white is how we can do some fun things on top of the backgrounds. And that's the key, is like, how can you layer the painting? And often I'll say this, like, you make a painting and then you paint it again, and then you paint it again, and then you paint it again, and then again, and then maybe you have it finished. So I'm going to charge my brush with my linseed oil. I have an angular shader, a 3/8 inch, so it's real fine and thin. I'm going to load the brush, both sides, and then I'm just going to try some fun mark making on the surface. I'm going to kind of drag the brush, roll the brush. See if I can make a really skinny line. And just try some different marks. And if I don't love it, this is the beauty of oil paint. Oops. I can just clean the brush, pick up the paint. I can just make it go away. Is that like magic? Oh, I love that. Oh, I keep dropping stuff. Fun, right? So use the rest of your paint. You'll notice here that it's all gone. I did a pretty good job with that like chocolate chip size to cover the surface. So put that kind of knowledge in your head, and that'll help you know how much paint you need as you move along. And you can try some different things with your different tools. I'm going to grab this white that is left and see what happens. if I float it over the top, I'm going to wipe this off, and if I don't like it, take it back off. And then I can work that paint right back into the surface. So until your surface is all used, just keep playing with it. If you want to make 2 of these or 3 of these, because, well, let's face it, they're really fun to make, do it. Because the more you do these little kind of test exercises, the more you'll understand how the materials work, and how far the paint will go, what the brushes feel like, and so forth. So we have a pretty nice kind of grayscale. Okay, when you're done with this painting session, I'm going to turn this video off in just a second. We'll switch gears in a minute and we'll do it in color. But here's again how you want to paint, clean your brushes. We'll use this in a second. So if I didn't use all my paint, which I brilliantly did, I would scrape out, let's say I had a lot of white left, I would scrape all my white together. This would be if I had more than this. I would push it into a little ball, a tight little area. And then with a clean brush, I would drizzle linseed oil over it, just a little. And that'll help once I put the lid back on of the palette to keep it from drying out. But that's probably not enough paint to necessarily save, but you could try it so that you can see in your studio environment at home how quickly it dries out, how does it respond, and so forth. But again, like if you had a lot of paint left, you could kind of gather it together. I really don't. Well, I don't know, there's a lot coming out of my brushes. And then save that little pot of paint. So you want to scrape out all the paint. And the idea when you wash your brushes is that you're washing them in the sink with soap. I'll show you on a video. Almost clean brushes before you even get to your kitchen or your studio sink. So I'm scraping out all the paint. And look at that, there's a lot. There's quite a bit of paint there. So I could use that later or play with it at a different time. Okay, so we'll wipe off our knives, and if you need to wash these in the sink you can, but hopefully they just get cleaned up with your towel. Then we come back to our cleaner. Typically we would be using a mineral spirit product, not this natural stuff. We would use like a turpentine. So if you have experience with painting and you've never used this before, you might not love it. It's definitely a second, but it makes it so that we don't get a headache or ruin our liver. So the idea is that I get all of the paint almost out so that it's practically clean. And then like I said, I'll do a video in a second over the sink so you can see how to wash them. And remember, you're at home now painting, and you really don't want the paint down the sink. So I will explain when we're in there. Oops, it got caught in the cleaner brush. So I'll meet you back here in a little bit with a new video where we talk about how to lay out our color palette. I'll do a video with the brush cleaning, and we will go from there. Send me any questions or comments if you have any. I'm here for you to help. Oops, that one is just really grumpy. You'll notice too that one of the funnest things about painting is having a lot of brushes going all at once. It's a little more to clean, but I'm telling you it's worth it. Especially when we get into color. Like you'll like to have a series of brushes, like you'll have a warm set of brushes, a cool set of brushes, and so forth. Okay, I will meet you at the sink in the next video and go from there. Because there's not much paint here, I could either just leave this, or I could scrape some of it up and recycle this paper. So as we get through the semester, you'll know when you want to do this and when you don't. But for now, I'll just leave this gray down here and the white with the linseed oil on it so I can see what happens. Okay, see you at the sink. Bye.